No, there's no federal environmental impact statement on this project. And when the environmental impact statement was submitted, the DNR likely knew that Enbridge was going to ask for 5 billion gallons and not 630 million gallons. The environmental impact statement assessed in a weak way the impact of the 630 million gallons of water, but did no assessment of this region. This region was really pushed through by the Fond du Lac Band, and there was no real cultural assessment done of this region. But the Minnesota DNR approved all kind of permits, and in this case, like, it seems that the level of corruption has gone pretty high because, first of all, they changed the permit level in a drought and approved a permit for 5 billion gallons in the worst drought we've ever seen in Minnesota in my lifetime. And during that, the DNR knew that Enbridge wanted 5 billion gallons before they issued the permit for 630 million gallons. And then they amended the permit, and when they amended the permit, they paid $150 to get 5 billion gallons of water. And then the Minnesota DNR didn't tell anybody about the permit amendment until May 14th, when they informed the tribes that they had an amendment to the permit increasing the amount of water that Enbridge would take by 10 times. And then on May 27th, they had a tribal consultation, and on June 4th, they issued the permit. There was no assessment of this impact at any point. So the DNR issued these permits, and not only did the DNR issue these permits, the DNR recently withheld or suspended the water allocation permits for Enbridge, suspended them all. But they suspended them after they told Enbridge that they would have to go get the water, and so Enbridge sucked water out of parched rivers. On the Mississippi River, we saw them pumping water, maybe, 100,000, maybe 200,000, maybe 500,000 gallons of water out of the Mississippi River, already very low, under guard by the DNR. We saw DNR officials guarding Enbridge's water hoses, sucking water out of the Mississippi River. And that was up to, just when the permits were suspended. And so the DNR had informed Enbridge that their permits were going to get suspended, and the DNR provided a support for Enbridge to secure water out of parched river systems. It's a critical low. And in some places, the Shell River is actually not a river, it's a pond. Further upstream, there are some places where, it's very dry. And here it is very low. And there's a very, delicate ecosystem here, particularly with this mussel population that is so unique. And because mussels, so for instance, bitumen, that's what tar sands is, it sinks to the bottom. It doesn't oil, it sits on the top. So if they have a spill in this river, they'll kill the mussels. They will. Enbridge is required by the permit terms to pay for the police in the north. And to pay for the police required to put in their pipeline. And, someone might just want to ask, it doesn't look, is it a really good idea if there's so many cops? Like, why are there so many cops if it was such a great idea to start with? So Enbridge is paid for militarizing the north. And, they've been paying the reimbursements for the police up north, and I'm sure that'd be substantial. Reimbursements this last month for the number of arrests. But, that's a real legal question because the police are now paid by Enbridge and they're not paid to serve the people of Minnesota. And that is a really problematic issue in a democracy or in civil society. And so we've seen, for instance, I was there when there was a frack out on the Willow River and we were looking at the frack out. And the DNR was there to arrest us, not Enbridge, which had the frack out. And generally, if there's a violation of the permit by Enbridge, the DNR is not going to prosecute them. There's no recourse for the people as we watch our land and water get trampled on. But to me, it is a big problem to consider that a Canadian corporation owns your police force, that a Canadian corporation owns your police force. And in third world countries, it's common for Canadian multinationals to militarized to take over small towns so they could put in mining operations. There's a long history of Canadian mining corporations and human rights violations in Central America.
Yep.
And here you have Canadian corporations and human rights violations in northern Minnesota, all paid for by Enbridge. And, I feel like that the model of a foreign multinational owning your police is not the model that you want in a democracy. Well, regulatory capture is what Enbridge has done quite successfully. I'd like to congratulate them. They got the judicial system, they got the legislative system, they got the regulatory system. They also control a lot of the media in the north. They have, put the word out. Some papers don't cover this project. It's the single largest construction project in the North's history, but it's not discussed in some of the newspapers up here. And Enbridge, writes a lot of the press comments for the local media, and some reporters have been called off the beat if they wrote anything damaging about Enbridge. So they've done a good job in capturing the political process of the North. But there's a lot of water protectors, and there's more coming. And questions that I got to ask, and I think Wisconsin should ask these same questions, is that in the state of Michigan, the governor of Michigan and the DNR revoked the permits for Enbridge to go into the Straits of Mackinac. That was a matter of, I think Governor Whit referred to that as the public trust, exercising the public trust and saying that that was the responsibility of the state of Michigan, not to ensure that a Canadian multinational could continue to make profits. So revoked those permits, and then said that after the date of May 12th or 13th, that all profits and proceeds would be derived to the state of Michigan. Well, Enbridge rebuked that and said that the authority that issued the permits couldn't revoke them. The state which had issued the easement permits couldn't revoke those. And that's a big problem. When the Canadian corporation gets the permits and then gets to say who gets to pull them. And I know that Minnesota has joined in on the side of Michigan in the court proceedings. But, as I talk to people in Wisconsin, this is a Canadian multinational. This is not our friend. And the fact that they could say to Wisconsin or Minnesota that, you issued the permits to us, but we're not leaving. That's a pretty unwelcome practice. It's a rogue corporate practice. And so to me, on one hand, we're going to continue to pitch this battle against them. It's also a battle for, who gets to decide what the future is. We intend to battle these guys on out, but, in the end, what you're looking at is Enbridge is the last tar sands pipeline. Nobody gets a tiara for putting in the last tar sands pipeline. And this is the most expensive tar sands pipeline in history, and the tar sands themselves, the investment has diminished significantly since they began their project 6 years ago. 7 years ago, I lose track of myself. But in that, they, I know that Enbridge's shippers are suing them because they don't want to pay the $2 billion cost overruns for this pipeline. They feel those costs should be borne by Enbridge and not by the shippers. And so they're suing Enbridge. And I know that I believe there's another $13 billion on the chopping block of tar sands investment. The Saudi sovereign fund moved out. I believe that even Chevron and Royal Dutch Shell are looking at removing their tar sands interests. And so I'm sitting here looking at the planet is baking. We can see the fires everywhere. We know that climate change is here. We know that the rivers in northern Minnesota, you can't tube down the rivers up here because there's no water in them. We know that the farms are parched. We know that the city of Minneapolis can't water their lawns every day now. But we see the impact of climate change, beginning to come our way in a significant way. And, that doesn't bode well for the last tar sands pipeline. That Canada is a petrostate. The entire plan of Canada is based on the tar sands. They don't have a plan B. They have a stupid extractive economy without a plan to get out of it. And so they are working for Canada. They're working for Justin Trudeau. The entire economy of Canada needs a structural adjustment. That's the truth. And because they've had to close down some of their mining operations in northern Ontario because of the forest fires. Yeah, should probably close down a lot of your stuff, Trudeau. But the part of the point of it is that Enbridge is a multinational corporation with, I believe, 225 subsidiaries, American. But the money's in Canada. And so if the pipeline goes at Bad River, for instance, if the pipe breaks at Bad River, or Straits of Mackinac, Enbridge's initial cost estimate, I think, was like $300 million. We're talking a $40 billion accident. And the question might be is who's paying for that if they're self-insured and none of the money and none of the insurance is held with the subsidiaries, it's held by the mothership in Canada. And, to me, late stage Windigo capitalism, obviously a lot of fossil fuel addiction. You're making some bad decisions, Governor Walz. You know, all of these states are making some bad decisions to let such a risky pipeline company continue operations at the end of the tar sands era. I mean, I'm talking about this. We're going to keep battling it out river by river and continue in the legal and regulatory challenges that we have. We really want the Biden administration to do an environmental impact statement on this project. That'd be helpful, because there wasn't one done by the Trump administration. Not surprising. But the Biden administration is a little smarter than the Trump administration, and they could do this environmental impact statement. The Army Corps of Engineers could pull some water permits for the parched rivers that no longer need to be, no longer should be crossed. But, for us, we're going to work on that. But we're preparing to build a bottle washing factory in Superior. We're putting up solar panels on people's houses and solar thermal on people's houses. And, like a lot of other tribal members, we're growing hemp. And we intend to build a new green revolution beyond Enbridge because I'm quite sure that their playbook is coming to an end. On our organization and a number of other local organizations has been working on rebuilding local food systems for 25 years and local energy systems. And we're working with tribes throughout our region to rebuild some of those systems. The reason it's, if you drive up here where their new line is, you see all new giant power lines because the single largest energy consumer in the state of Minnesota is Enbridge because moving sludge takes power. And so, as you think about the next energy economy, you might want to think about getting some wasteful uses off, like moving sludge. Enbridge's entire main line is the equivalent of 2 big nuclear power plants full of power. That's how much energy Enbridge takes. So we're interested in relocalized energy systems, community grids, local grids, and local food systems. And as I said, we're on the edge of rebuilding some hemp textile industry here. And right now, Enbridge at the end of this pipeline project will have 23 jobs. And I will tell you that we already have more than 23 people working on renewable energy and food systems on White Earth. And I don't have billions of dollars, So we're looking forward to it, and we plan to do more work in Superior. Superior needs a little love, and they need a plan B besides Husky. And so I'd like to work on the just transition for Superior, because I feel like it's my town too. And of course, we intend to do some more work on our beloved island, Madeline Island. There's this legal and jurisprudence question of who should have the rights. And obviously, in the creation of the American legal institutions and other institutions, based on papal law and such, there's a presumption of rights going with first Christians and not non-Christians. And but over time, our legal institutions and have come to privilege corporations. A corporation is considered a natural person under the law. And so the rights of corporations are being upheld as superior to the rights of humans and certainly the rights of nature. But the bigger picture is that the regulatory systems of the United States are inadequate, and they were never adequate, because you've destroyed in the regulatory systems like 70% of the wild rice already. in your regulatory systems. Your regulatory systems allowed for the decimation of the buffalo, the decimation of the sturgeon, and the destruction of so much water. When the 1855 treaty was signed, you could drink the water from every creek and river up here. There was you could ride horse to the west of us for 3 days solid and see a buffalo to your left the whole time. You had sturgeon throughout these rivers. They're like the buffalo of the north, and you had wild rice everywhere. This is a wild rice economy. This isn't an Enbridge economy or an industrial ag economy. This is a wild rice economy. So, and these rivers were clean. That's what we're responsible for. That's what the Creator intended, the way that we intended to live. And so the 1855 Treaty Authority is interested in the restoration of that ecosystem. And in the heart of that is the shell. And so I, have been living here on the shell for 2 months now. And I have, and the shell is by my house. The lake is, I live in Shell Lake Township. So I know this lake, I know this energy. And the river needs to be acknowledged as having a right to live, because they kill rivers. And this river, we're not going to let them kill. It's not just Enbridge here, it's industrial agriculture. Upstream from here, there's 62 irrigation permits that have been issued for mostly a potato farmer named R.D.O. Offit. And, so our 1855 Treaty Authority and our tribe is looking to challenge those endless permits for water withdrawals being enjoyed by irrigators. But, the bigger picture, and you see, is the rights of nature. And so across the world, jurisdictions, tribal, indigenous, state, national jurisdictions are recognizing the rights of a river. So I believe that the first rivers were in New Zealand, Aotearoa, and then in the Himalayas, and then the rights of the Klamath River were acknowledged by the Yurok tribe. And our tribe passed the rights of wild rice in 2019. And so I'm here to protect the river and the rice. And my job is to advocate for the river and the wild rice and the clams. And so that's why I'm here now. I mean, I'm here because I'm an Anishinaabe, but my legal responsibility for the tribe is to protect this river. And so, we're gonna oppose the Enbridge permits. We're gonna challenge the irrigation permits. And then I'm going to work with a lot of other people. We're going to create some of this river is protected, but it needs a cultural corridor, an ecological corridor. So we're going to be hoping to purchase land and conservation easements to push back things which would affect the river adversely from the river. They should write to the Army Corps of Engineers and ask it for an environmental impact statement in the Biden administration, and ask for a full environmental impact statement. And if you are in Wisconsin, you got plenty of Enbridge problems, so stand up to them. Stand up to them and don't let them run your state, because the regulatory capture that they've succeeded in exercising in Minnesota certainly is also in Wisconsin with the Dane County and all of the litigation against landowners. Keep fighting them. Every day it's more expensive for them. As I stood there or sat there, on Monday, facing a line of police officers, I thought to myself, rack it up, guys. Rack it up, because they're all paid for by Enbridge. Interestingly, in my charges, we were a public safety threat because we had taken the attention of the police away from public safety needs. I said, no, Enbridge is paying for this. You can't charge me with that. Those cops were already there at Enbridge's request, so we'll be standing here.